And finally, I will show you a secret chapel that is on private grounds and not accessible to public. Hello everyone, I'm very happy you're back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about chapels, and if you know a little bit about rural France, you also know that chapels are everywhere on the countryside. Even the tiniest villages, only with a couple of houses, have their own chapel. And chapels are indeed small places of worship in small villages where a full-size church would not be needed due to the small population of the village. So also at the Tripoint area we have a lot of chapels. I've made a selection of my favorite chapels for you in this video, and also some history of these chapels as well. All of these chapels are located in the immediate proximity of the border of France and Germany. And the two very first chapels that we will see are both located in Paix and more precisely in Belmach. After these two chapels in Belmach, we will have a look at another chapel which is right on the border. And finally, I will show you a secret chapel that is on private grounds and not accessible to public. So stay tuned until the end and enjoy our Tripoint area chapel tour. So let's start with the Chapel of Saint Anthony of Padua, located in the tiny hamlet of Belmach. The first chapel that we visit is the Chapel of Saint Anthony of Padua. This chapel has been named after a Portuguese Catholic priest who lived between the 12th and the 13th century. Saint Antoine of Padua was born and raised by a wealthy family in Lisbon, and he died in Padua in Italy. Saint Anthony is the patron saint of lost things, so when you lose something, it is Saint Anthony whom you shall call. Before 2006, there was a 100-year-old oak tree whose strong roots caused deep cracks to the chapel walls, and the tree was then removed along with the restoration of the building. Next to the chapel, on the ruins of an old shepherd's house, is a grotto. The idea to build this grotto came to Mr. Ernest Sontag, who lived in the hamlet of Belmach, where the chapel is located, in September of 1939. The grotto became a promise of Ernest to his mother, who 20 years before had sent her husband to war and was now faced with the same situation with her 3 sons. Ernest told his mom, "Mother, if we find ourselves together in Belmach after the war, I promise you I will build a grotto of Lourdes next to the chapel on the ruins of the shepherd." And so he did. The grotto was built from the stones collected from the village by the 2 brothers Louis and Ernest after the war. The gate, that was the village school's gate and was destroyed in the fights, was donated to the grotto by the mayor of the village. Ernest buried a cover of a bomb under the keystone of the grotto, together with some debris that had been gathered from the gardens of the people in the village, as reminders of this terrific era that they had lived. Later on, other debris that has been found from the village has been put on the foot of the Virgin Mary statue of the grotto, like a further reminder for all of us about the gratitude that we should have towards the peace that has remained ever since. All of this information is originating from the sign next to the chapel of this Saint Anthony of Padua, and from the diary of Mr. Ernest Sontag, who was born in 1914 and lived just like the oak tree next to the chapel, 100 years old. The second chapel is also in Belmach, but this time down the hill from the Chapel of Saint Anthony of Padua. The Chapel of Saint Anthony of Padua is located on a hilltop, whereas this beautiful Chapel of Belmach is located down the hill from the Belmach hamlet, next to a calm stream that runs from the hills to the river Moselle. The Belmach Chapel is privately owned, open to the public, and has been on its place at least from the 16th century. The original 16th century wooden polychrome Pieta of Mary contemplating the dead body of her son was actually donated to the church of Sierre-les-Bains in the 1950s, where it is still displayed today. Our third chapel is the Chapel of Peace, La Chapelle de la Paix, which is located directly on the border of Germany and France. This Chapel of Peace is very particular. It is in the middle of the fields in the commune of Merschweiler, and it's very particular as it has been built exactly on the border of the two countries, France and Germany. Also, unlike the other chapels seen in this episode, the Chapelle de la Paix is very newly built and dates from 1996. Inside this chapel, there is a list of names of people who have deceased during the 3 Franco-German wars, and these names are displayed in alphabetical order instead of by nationality. Once a year, there is a service that is held at the chapel and its grounds, and behind the chapel there is a memorial stone for the victims of the 30 Years' War that lasted from 1618 until 1646. Our last and final chapel is the secret chapel located on private grounds. So the last chapel is the one that is old as a fairy tale, so no one knows when it has been really built, and this chapel is located on private grounds with no access to the public, so I would like to thank the owner for giving us the possibility and permission to visit this secret place of history. This chapel is very unfortunately completely in ruins. The roof of the chapel collapsed some years ago, and most likely due to the heavy bombings in this area as well, it has already been destroyed a long time ago. It is said that in the other buildings located on the grounds of this chapel, there was 60 British soldiers that were hiding at the end of the Second World War. Next to the chapel, there is a fountain that ever since the late medieval times is said to have water that cures tooth pain. So hence, ever since the fairy tale has been told, people have come to this chapel whenever they had aches in their mouth. I hope you've enjoyed this chapel tour of the Tripoint area. There are many more chapels and churches in this area, so if you are around here, don't hesitate to go and visit these historical monuments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this content to be of value. See you in the next video. Bye!